Jeg skulle elske med det.
Der er måske nogle ting, vi godt kunne gemme.
Ja, du kan jo ikke passe det.
Det er lidt det, jeg mener vel. Jeg synes bare ikke, vi behøver at smide det hele uge.
Vi kan jo ikke gemme ud.
Resten of Livet with the original title Forever. I'm going to introduce the members of the team. From the far end to here, we've got with us Jonas Bagger, the producer of the film, METTE, MUNK, PLUM, actress, FRELLE PETERSEN, director, JETTE SONDERGAARD, actress, and OLE SORENSEN, actors in the film. And I'm going to open the questions. If there's no questions, I might ask a question. Well, it seems that there's someone in the front row that wants to ask a question. What do you know? She's going to speak in English, I think.
Hi. My first question is for the director. There's a bunch of topics covered that I thought they were interesting. One being how sometimes people mourn in incompatible ways. Another one being how sometimes you feel like you're betraying the person who's gone if you try to move on. Is there any particular thing that triggered all this project? Is there one particular idea that was the center of everything else?
Yeah, it started with a family I know who lost a son, and at one point we were at a party with a lot of people, and I asked the mother if how things were going. I talked a little bit about the son, and then she said a little bit later that evening, she said, I really appreciate that you always talk to me about our loss and about our son, and I was kind of surprised by this statement, and obviously the family have experienced that. A lot of people around them feel it's a bit taboo talking about the loss, and I asked if I could meet with the family, and also I was curious about how does life go on after you suffer from this tremendous loss. So when I did that, the conversation that evening with the two two siblings and the parents, we ended talking a lot about how they experience grief in different ways and how hard it was in the family. And so that's how it all started for me, and then I began to do a lot of research with other families who have experienced losing a young one.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta.
I'm not too sure whether there are any further questions. Yes?
I have another question. It's about the last scene. As a person who hates roller coasters with a passion, I wanted to know how that went. Did anybody throw up or scream or something?
Take that question. So his friend actually works in the Tivoli, and he actually runs the roller coaster. So he was driving it. And the first time we do a take a lot of times, and the first time around, he went with the normal speed, and we were all just screaming our heads off, and we could not act at all because we were just scared for our life. So he was able to actually slow the roller coaster down just a tiny bit, which made it possible for us to run it like 8 times, I think that was. So yeah, nobody threw up. It was all good.
Yeah. And I was sitting in the cart right in front of the actors with a monitor and had to look down all the time. And from the first trip, I was sitting like, so I didn't see anything. But luckily it worked out.
No sé si hay alguna pregunta. Mira.
I'm not too sure whether there are any further questions. Alicia? Hi. I would like to ask you, because of the humor that you have in the film, why? Because it's so harsh and it's so delicate and it's so deep that the birds in this film, you thank them, you're very thankful for them appearing. And I would like to know whether there are any difference or whether you dealt differently the death of a young person. If it had been, the film had been different, if the person who dies would not have been a young person, I imagine the film would have been different. Don't you agree? And address that, the bits of humor that you used in the film as well.
Thank you. Well, I think the film is very much about the different grief process, and much of that is similar. But for me, I've never experienced a loss of a young person. I lost my grandparents, whom I loved very much. But I can't imagine how hard it is to go through losing a young person. So definitely comparing my own experience with grief to the families that I met during my research, it's not comparable. So yeah, it would have been a different film if they lost the grandmother, for example. And that doesn't mean that that in a way there's a difference in grief, because yeah, it's something we all is going to experience at some point, and sometimes it just gets even harder. And about the humor, in South Jutland, where we come from, I think we always have a great sense of humor. And it's, yeah, I guess it was important for me to show all the facts of life, all the different stages of life, and you can be sad at 1 minute, and 5 minutes later someone can surprise you, and it can break out in laughter, it can make you mad, and I wanted to have that in there, and also as a part of telling the story of people around the family who are not comfortable about talking about the loss. So it was a great way to both get humor and to show that side of the people, yeah. Sure.
I'm not too sure whether there are any further questions. Thank you. I would like to talk to the actress who plays the role of the mother, because I think that her grief, all her grief is internal, it's inwards, and there's a moment where she explodes. I would like to talk about her grief as a mother in this film, because the father and the daughter accompany each other, and they're with each other, but she's very lonely, she's on her own. Could you please talk about your experience in the film as regards this issue?
Yes, I felt I should be on my own after my son died. I tried to put myself in her sorrow, in her grief, and I think me personally, I couldn't have controlled my grief as she did, but I understand her very, very much. Because I think this grief of losing a son or a daughter, it's unbearable. And I think I understand her very much, that she needs to work her grief away, and also that it's actually impossible. I talk with FRELLE a lot about it, because I remember from the early start you told me about a mother. FRELLE traveled around and talked to various mothers and fathers about their grief, and especially one story I thought a lot about was about a mother who had been effective from the very day nearly. And from the funeral, she was effective. Can I help you? Do you want some more coffee? Being in the role of the hostess. And I was thinking a lot about that. So, yes, I put the role on her. Yeah.
¿Hay alguna otra pregunta?
Any further questions? Hi, I like the ellipsis that you use of the face of the son with the song, and to go directly then onto a moment in which he's passed away. You don't represent at any time when he dies or how he reacts or how he dies. We go directly to the subsequent grief. I imagine, obviously, this is a script decision. I'm not too sure whether you addressed that was like that from the outset, or you had other alternatives of the reaction of the family members when he died, or do you opted for this decision? And I thought it was a good idea, but I'd like to know what's the reason behind that choice?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was from the very beginning important for me not to explain the cause of death. And yeah, before I started writing the screenplay and doing the research, I realized every time I met with some new people who've lost a young one, it was very much about the grief process, the individual grief process and what it does to a family, and that really interested me. But of course I knew how their son or daughter died, but I felt if I would explain that, the cause of death in the film, that would be very specific for this family, and I would give the audience a chance to be a part of this journey with the family members left behind. And also not just to tell the specific story about maybe it was an accident, maybe it was illness like cancer or something like this, then it would become more specific and I would be afraid that it wouldn't connect as much to the audience on an emotional level. So quite quickly I decided that. I talked to Jonas, my producer, a lot about it at one point, and so did we during the research process, because I knew it would be a bold choice, but we felt it was right. When we talked a lot about it, it felt like something we should do. So yeah.
One of the things I really loved about your script was exactly that you did not point it out, because this way so many more people could actually relate and just look at the different ways of grieving and see themselves reflected back in that, and not just, well, he died of that. So I thought that was so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yo quería preguntarle a Ole y a Jette.
Ole and Jette, talk about your character, Ole and Jette. That is to say, each character in the film lives their grief in a different way. It is true that the director and the film in itself wants to tell the story from a calm perspective. It's a film where there's not dramatic explosion. Everything is very contained and in calm. When you portray your roles, how did you address it as the actors, that containment in those situations of an extreme grief, which is the loss of a son? How did you do this when you were as actors?
Yeah, I can start to answer. I was very good guided by my director, FRELLE, because I have not the experience to have to lose a son. That's special and must be really hard to lose a son. And the father and the son was very good connected about making coffee. So the father and the son, he expected the son to go further with the shop. So for him, was it a total shock to lose his son, and he just made a church in his little house where he could talk to him, but kept his grief by himself a lot of times and connected with Jette, his daughter, because they could talk about it. So that's the way I see it, the father's and the son's connection. Okay?
I can't actually remember the question.
No, la pregunta era que
The question was that the characters live the loss and the grief in a different way. The truth is that the film is very contained and it's very calm, without big explosions, dramatically speaking, trying to tell the stories from a very day-to-day and a very relaxed manner. And my question was that, how did you address and do work on that in your characters? Because I imagine it's not very easy to talk to something that's so hard and do it from a very calm standpoint. How did you do this in the way you portrayed your role, your characters?
Yes, I think actually it's terrible to say, but I think a lot of marriages, it's really, really tough to. They were friends, they were pals, they were very good man and wife. And I think it's an awful challenge, if you can say it like that. But when we did it, when we made the film, of course, it was my job to see it from the mother's side. And she was trying to be effective and do as every day should be, hold tight up in the rhythm of every day to lock out the sorrow of her. And he was doing exactly the opposite. So I understand, my goodness, he was so irritating. She thought so. And actually a lot of times FRELLE had to hold back in my temper, because a lot of times I got maybe more mad with him than
you should.
FRELLE wanted the film as a story that was everyone's story. It's the mother's story, it's a daughter's story, it's a father's story, it's the audience's story, it's everyone. It's I have met people seeing the story from my point of view, from the mother's point of view. Although it was a man I met, he said, but it's exactly the way I felt. I couldn't take it in. I went around years before something exploded in me. And I've met also the other point of view, the people who were in grief for years. But yes, I understand very much from the mother's point of view, because that was my challenge. So, and they could have been divorced on it, I think, but they didn't, luckily.
I feel extremely privileged to have been able to be a part of telling this story and looking at grief in the way. And I am so happy that FRELLE, and I think that was what you were thinking, that FRELLE decided to keep it realistic, and not plather it with all kinds of wild outbursts and stuff, but actually he really did his work, and he sat down, he thought about how would or how will normal people react. And as he said already, it is an up and down. I've had close family members who lost a young child, and it's up and down. And some days you meet them and they are just doing what they are normally doing. Other days they are really, really, really sad. And the only thing you can do as someone close to them is to try and be there where they are. and meet them in their feelings, and it's really hard. And I love that he told this story in such a realistic way to show what life actually is. Yeah. Thanks.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta.
Not sure whether there are any further questions. Hi, congratulations for such a delicate film and a well-treated subject matter. I would like to ask you, as we're living we're living a more individualistic life, each of us. The spirit of community, I like it in the family and the community with the neighbors and the people surrounding them. And the truth is, I'm not too sure. I would like to ask you whether in Denmark, in southern Jutland, this is something that usually happens, or in Copenhagen as well. Because I have the feeling that such a globalized issue that we're going through, well, we're living, I'm surprised by this type of film, which is such a community sort of affair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, I've tried now to live for 21 years in South Jutland and then 20 years in Copenhagen, and there is a difference in the way that, and I guess it's always like that all around the world. If you live in a big city with a lot of people, you might not know your neighbor very well, but if you live in South Jutland or a local community like this, where you do have a lot of the sports arena where they go to meet and see sports, and the local shop where the customers from the local community will stop by, and they're not only there to buy coffee, they're also there to gossip and to talk about their lives. So it's very authentic portrait of South Jutland. I can definitely recommend living there if anyone. It's a nice community, and I always feel that there's a great connection among the citizens, and that makes it more obvious when you lose someone and then suddenly they are not there. There used to be this strong connection maybe to your neighbors, and then you experience that they walk on the other side of the street to use the other sidewalk just to not have this conversation, feel the anxiety, and that becomes very painful. I've talked to families in grief all over the country, but that was one thing that stand out in the local community to have experience like this. So, yeah.
No sé si hay alguna otra pregunta.
Not sure whether there are any further questions. Yes? Yes. I know the importance of coffee in Denmark. People are always drinking coffee in Denmark. And that surprises us a lot because we can't understand everyone's hysteric every day because they're drinking coffee, but it's great. We drink beers, which is really good for us. It works well for us, but coffee. And I thought that this young girl could have a baby because she's lost a brother, which doesn't happen either. But the third thing, which I thought was quite a curiosity, is she dedicates to take care of kids that have Down syndrome. And all of those points, which are so like a roller coaster, are intertwined, and they're like surround this whole story. Could you talk about those three elements that I've just talked about? I don't know whether you remember them, the coffee and the other two elements, okay?
Yes. Well, the coffee comes from my very big passion for coffee. I drink it a lot. But I used to work in a pet store with my father when I lived in South Jutland before I became a filmmaker. And some of the things happening there, instead of coffee, we always had a fight about dog food. I wanted to try to sell the new dog food, but I couldn't because the customers wanted the old one, because the dog was happy for that. And I thought about what should this be, and I decided on coffee, and also this skill of coffee making, because it's always been like sometimes in Danish news we hear about that things doesn't really develop when it comes to the outcasts places. But we don't experience that, because where we film at the roast thing, where they roast the coffee, that's a place down there. And of course there's just as big as an interest in the difference in coffee also in that part of the country. So that's also a statement from my side. And
Jeg kan faktisk helt ærligt vildt ikke.
and what was the other one, sorry, besides the coffee? Oh, yeah.
Yes, the pregnancy. You getting pregnant because you lost a brother. Why didn't you get pregnant? I was asking about why is there the trying being, why would one of the characters become a mother? Because at the end of the day, we don't know, it could have been a sort of a happy ending vis-a-vis someone who loses a brother and then she has a baby. And leaving open that plot, she's asking about that because you left that open.
Yeah, well, I did some research also with couples who had a hard time getting pregnant, and I realized quickly that I wanted to tell this story with grief in about a year. That there was like a year going with grief. Basically, taken from when I talked to families, they said. It's not like things get easier, but you have to live your life, you have to go to work, you have to get up in the morning and do all these practical things. And usually it takes something like 6 to 12 months, and you you get like a more natural, everyday life again, but the grief will always be there forever, the title. And when I did the research about trying to get pregnant, usually it would take more years, and the most important thing for me is to keep the story naturalistic and realistic. So I thought that would be a wrong ending already to show there that she's pregnant, just to give the audience a feeling of something is good. Something is a happy ending, but that's not really the case here. This is a very realistic story about how it is to experience grief, especially losing a young one. So yeah, I didn't want to explain that in the ending. So, but I think very much that they will have a baby at some point. And I've actually had audience member also say that they've seen signs that she is pregnant. I think 3 places someone says that she might be. But that's what I really love. I love to not give all the answers. I want to invite the audience to be part of the story, and they can fortolke.
Yo quería preguntar...
They can interpret, interpret what they experience. So. Yeah.
And what they want to have happen.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an opening.
Yeah.
Og hun mener, at du så straffer hende i virkeligheden 2 gange.
Oh.
Håbet er der jo, håbet er jo ikke.
Yeah, but the hope is still there and is alive. But yeah, it's...
I think it's one of the things that actually makes Lily and her husband also get through it. And the rest of the family is this hope they have. So you have something to work towards. It will never ever take any of the grief away from losing her brother or them losing their son, but it's a hope, and a new baby would of course be fantastic for everyone. So.
Yeah. Someone dies and someone is born. Yeah.
A mí yo creo que sería una
I think it would be a pity to have the whole team of the film and not ask the producer, Jonas Bagger, for his decision of getting involved in the film. I've got the feeling that it's a moment of a lot of changes in cinema, and there aren't so many producers who commit themselves to very complex and with a very layered subject matter. And apart from the way in which you address them, they're very harsh problems. And like, for example, the case of loss and grief. When I saw the film, I've got a feeling that everybody in the team believes in the story. It stems from a community of people who believe in a story and in these characters. But I'd like to know, as a producer, you want your film to be seen as much as possible and for the film to work. But why did you commit yourself? Why did you decide to get on board this project in a moment in which it seems that there's more commitment for more light entertainment? And it's a film which is very deep. It's a very humanist film, and it's a film which talks about things which are very, very interesting and with which we coexist on a day-to-day basis. But you do so, it does it in a very serious way and a very clear way as well.
Thank you. The question being whether it would be easier to do a more commercial film with a happy end, basically. Well, the reason I thought this project was fantastic was because of the auteur, FRELLE. I've been seeing his films, and he's obviously extremely talented. And we wanted to give him total freedom. And as you say, there's a lot of the part of the industry that is very focused on high-speed, very easy, readable feature films and TV series, but we are in our part of the world very fortunate that we are able to actually finance films that are from the inside out. It's coming from the director, from the screenwriter, in this case being the same person, and not from what the audience would like to see, basically. So it's all about supporting FRELLE and his idea, and this film being about grief is like it's a really, really bad pitch to try to sell, but it's of course hooked up on this artistic way of telling it. It's all about the way you tell it. When you read the script, and if you doesn't know FRELLE's style, you would think this is what's in it. Why do we want to care about this? But as soon as you understand the artistic way of telling this story, it all makes sense. And it's been very easy to work with FRELLE. And what we wanted to do was also to make sure that this third film FRELLE made, that he didn't go into this very commercial machinery. We have a lot of talented people around us in the film industry, producers included, and all kind of artistic people. And I wanted to make sure that none of them were dominating the film too much, because film is a collaborative piece of work, but it's very important to support the director these days in being very, very strong around his ambition. So basically, when we casted the crew around us, they all very easily went into the idea that they should kind of like step one step back and just let FRELLE's vision prevail in all parts, in the production design, in the way we shoot it, in the sound design, and I really think we managed that. That's my feeling, to keep it as a FRELLE film. And FRELLE actually did the editing himself, which is also extremely important, that there was not a second artistic person coming in to interpret the story, but to keep it very close to the director. And when FRELLE writes, he is editing it at the same time, and when he shoots it, he is editing it at the same time in his head. So it makes totally sense, and I really hope that we can continue working like this, supporting films that are auteur-driven, even though the market is very, very commercialized, also in good ways, but but we need both sides of filmmaking.
No sé si hay una...
Not too sure whether there's one final question. In the front row.
Hi again. My question is mainly for the actors, but maybe also for the director. While watching this film, I was thinking, this is really sad. This is really hard. So if it's making me sad, who I'm just watching, I can't imagine what you guys were going through. So how do you cope with that? How do you deal with having to pretend to be really sad for all day, every day, for however long the shooting goes?
Yes, that's difficult too. Yes, I know. But FRELLE had made some guidance for us because he knew and he know how to show our grief when we are taking the shoot. And sometimes, even because I'm an actor from the scene, and I wanted to really make my crying on the... But FRELLE also always said, don't do that. Keep it. So therefore I knew when the film was finished, I had the experience and I knew it was very good, and I knew that the sorrow went inside and not outside. So you as an audience could see all our grief just to watch us. So that's FRELLE's way to make it. That's I'm very glad for. Yeah, that's my way to work. Yes.
You're thinking about how it takes a toll on us, having to go through those emotions every day and take for take. And yes, of course, it's hard. But you have a script for a really long time, and you read it and you read it and you work it out, and then you talk to FRELLE if he's on the same page as what you are thinking you want to do in the scene. And it becomes a sort of part of you, but you still have to be able to put it aside when it's said cut, because maybe the next scene is we're laughing. So it is hard, and it's hard to navigate in, but in all of our preparations, and he's really good also at being a partner in all of that work, you kind of have to like box it a little bit in your head and then pull it out when you need it. But yeah, some days were longer than others.
But we had some laughing in between.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You have to, or else
had
you would
to,
die. Yeah.
That was important.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, for me, I knew that it could be quite a challenge to put the actors into this state of mind they had to be in. But luckily, everyone is amazing talented, and had a great concentration when doing the scenes, but also managed to find the moments, you know, just the personal connection in between takes or in between scenes, which I think is important. And in general, on a film set, I very much appreciate that there's a great environment, work environment, a happy environment, and even though we
that
are...
actually, and no BS, sorry, but it actually does make our jobs easier when there is a sense of community and a good vibe, because then they relax, we relax, and we can just work together with everyone around us, because we do. Yeah.
And a great thing is we all live together for many weeks shooting, because we shoot in South Jutland, and most of us live in Copenhagen, and but still we stayed, everyone at a hotel, and we ate dinner together every night, and a lot of people stayed for the weekends as well, cast and crew, and it just gives a certain feeling, and it makes it easier to work with a material like this that is also very emotional. Yeah.
But I just want to say, we maybe not have talked about that, but we are all, us and FRELLE too, from the south of Denmark. So we have a kind of way to communicate, a special way. We know each other because we come from the same area. And that makes something, I'm sure, about to do this film.
Definitely.
I think, well, I think it was really tough some days, being in the sorrow again and again. And but I learned, as you can see, I'm quite old, so I learned way back from in the acting school that it was very important every day, whatever you had been working with, to get it out, to work it out. Some people work it out with their bodies, doing training. Some people, I walk a lot. I like actually like the mother I come to think of. But it's very, very important, because then you are also, of course, our breaks in between, lunch break or whatever. It's important to laugh. Laugh gets the sorrow out, and it sort of releases your mind and your body. So it refreshes you. And although you're going in and do another sorrow, grief scene, you are sort of refreshed. So it's very important to get out and in and out and in, if you understand what I mean.
And then we ate a lot of cake.
Yeah, we did. And my mother, she baked all the cakes in the film.
Very good.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, actually, while just shooting the film and looking at the scene, it was very emotional for me as well. Even though, you know, I think a lot of stuff, you know, technical stuff, and have to decide to give some directions. And but yeah, every day was emotional, and while editing the film, sometimes sitting for several weeks almost by myself. Some days were actually really, really tough, and I had to come back to some scenes and just, yeah, try to find the right way to tell the scene.
I just have to say also, we are actors, so we can imagine how it is. So we are finished the job every day. We are not sad all night and day after. We are actors, okay? Yeah.
I'm not.
Bueno, si no hay ninguna pregunta más, yo creo que
If there are no further questions, I think with that point
con esta bonita
and this
aclaración
beautiful
podemos
clearing up of that
por
point,
cerrada esta rueda de
we
prensa.
can finish this press conference. Thank you very much for the team of the film. Congratulations once again for your incredible film, and thank you very much to all of you, and a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you so much.